Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about the third and final season of Sanditon. So, before I head into my thoughts and feelings on this third and final season of Sanditon, I guess just a quick disclaimer. This video will most likely contain spoilers. I don't really know how else I can talk about this last season without getting into spoilers. So, if you are not caught up with the final episode of season 3 of Sanditon, you have been warned because I am definitely going to be going into some things. And yeah, everybody who hooks up with whoever. So, as I keep saying, this was the third and final season of Sanditon, and I'm kind of sad about that. It's like I'm kind of sad that it's over because I've been enjoying the show so much, considering the fact that season 1, if I'm not mistaken, season 1 aired back in 2019. It was canceled. We were all devastated and upset, especially with that cliffhanger between Charlotte and Sydney, dear God. And then all of a sudden, PBS is like, hey, because of fan petition and all this excitement for the show, we'll renew it. So yeah, we got season 2, like in, what was that, 2022? So yeah, we got the final season. So yeah, I'm just very grateful that we even had these last 2 seasons to begin with, because originally there was going to be no more. So I'm very grateful and appreciative that PBS picked up this show. And yeah, I think this last season was a very enjoyable season for the most part. It had nice comedic moments, had really nice dramatic, serious moments. I love kind of the lightness and fluffiness and levity of this show, because even though it is based off of a unfinished Jane Austen novel, still, it's very much Jane Austen in vibe and tone and mood, and it's a feel-good show. Sanditon, the way I like to think of it, Sanditon is just a nice feel-good show. It's uplifting and joyful and hopeful, and yeah, I enjoy the occasional period drama that's like that, because I think in recent years a lot of period dramas have been getting really dark and serious and moody, and there's like no sense of any joy in it sometimes. So yeah, the kind of the few that pop out that have some little bit of joy in it, I appreciate it. So yeah, Sanditon is definitely one of those shows. I just love the casualness of it. 'Cause Sanditon is just a very casual show. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It doesn't try to be over the top. It doesn't try to be wild and out there and trying to throw out any sort of wild craziness. It's just itself. It's very much just itself. It knows what type of show it is, and it sticks to those basics, and I love it for that. Um, so yeah, overall, I think in general, a nice, satisfying final season. I think, I don't know if I would consider it the best season, to be quite honest. I think there's still something about like season 1 that I think season 1 is probably still my favorite season, and then, yeah, probably then season 2, and then, yeah, probably this season. But yeah, just because it's last place definitely doesn't mean anything. It's still a great season of television, I think. And yeah, the reason we watch this show, it's definitely for the world of Sanditon, the world of Sanditon, this nice seaside resort, and yeah, also the characters. We watch this show for the wonderful, unique, lovable characters, flaws and all. I think my one big negative with this season, I, I don't know if it's just me. If you've seen the season, you can kind of let me know how you felt about it. I feel like this season, it's like there were things going on, obviously, but at the same time, I felt like there wasn't really anything going on. Does that make any sort of sense? I don't know. um, I felt like this entire season, it was only 6 episodes. The past seasons have been 8 episodes, so it was a little strange that this season was only 6. But yeah, it felt like there wasn't really much of anything going on. It was all just very like relationship focused, like every single episode was all about the relationships. There was hardly any other like big huge plot going on. Now, I mean, yeah, we did have, kind of looking here at some of the main plots. I mean, we had kind of the whole shocker with the Charlotte and Ralph engagement, and yeah, how Mr. Colburn fits in that. That's kind of its own plot. And then, yeah, another big plot is Georgiana dealing with the accusations that Lockhart throws at her in regards to her inheritance. So there's like that whole thing. And yeah, plus the arrival of Georgiana's mother, shocker. We know she's been looking for her mother the entire time. And then yeah, there's this whole big hoopla going on. Tom wants to make like a hotel, but that would require like tearing down a bunch of um, like the poorer areas of Sanditon in order to put this hotel. So there's a lot of hoopla going on between Tom and Mary about this hotel and the destruction of, neighborhoods where the poor are mostly living. Um, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of the basic main plots going on. And then, yeah, all your couples, all the various different couples, whether that's the scandalous drama going on between Augusta and Edward, or yeah, Georgiana and Otis, or Charlotte and Colburn, or Arthur and Harry, you guys, Tom, Mary. I have a whole list of people here. Yeah, this season is very, very heavily focused on the couples more than anything, and a lot of the other plots are kind of put on the back burner on occasion and only kind of brought up when they're needed to. I don't know if it's just me. So yeah, it's like I wish there was a little bit more substance this season, if that makes sense. I would have liked a little bit more to kind of fluff up some of the narrative rather than it just kind of being so one note in a way with just here's a couple, here's a couple, here's a couple, I would have loved like some other sort of additional drama to really kind of make things a little crazy. So I guess touching on a few little things here, because I kind of just briefly mentioned some things. Yeah, the Charlotte and Ralph engagement, you guys, that was a big shocker in the season 2 cliffhanger. I think we all knew Charlotte was not going to get with Ralph, right? We all knew that wasn't going to happen. Poor Ralph. He deserves someone, who will love him back. But yeah, that was kind of Charlotte's whole story this season was her. She needs to she needs happiness for herself. She's always kind of put others first before herself, and it's like she kind of needed to realize, hey, I need to be a little selfish, and just because I had this promise to Ralph, and just because I had this promise to my family that I would marry him, does that mean I have to be sad and miserable when I actually really love somebody else? So yeah, this whole season was really Charlotte's kind of self-exploration, kind of realizing that she needs to put her happiness first and foremost, or she's going to live a very sad, lonely life. Because there were those really funny scenes where her and Mary would go visit that one family that was poor and they had all the children, and the lady kept saying something like, "Oh, Charlotte, you're going to be like me sometime here in the future." And Charlotte, I think, was like, "Oh God, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to have a house full of children. I don't want my house to be falling apart." Moving on to Georgiana really quickly, I feel like one of the central characters this season was actually Georgiana, more so than Charlotte, which was kind of weird. That was kind of another issue I was having with this season, that I felt like poor Charlotte was definitely pushed to the back in some ways, that the writers really had no idea what to even entirely do with Charlotte. Like all of a sudden it's like, what do we do with her exactly? Because yeah, Georgiana definitely takes center stage of this final season. It kind of becomes her show more than Charlotte's show, which is definitely not really, I guess, too much of an issue, because I still really like Georgiana. But yeah, I could definitely feel the lack of Charlotte. Like a lot of times, Charlotte was just there to look lovelornly over to the side at Mr. Colburn. She would just have looks where she was sad and lonely and depressed. That's all it seemed like Charlotte was doing all damn season, just looking sad. And yeah, just staring at Mr. Colburn wordlessly, forlornly, making eye contact. And yeah, Ralph over here to the side. So yeah, poor Charlotte, I felt like she just didn't have anything to do, because all her story dealt with was Mr. Colburn. But yeah, Georgiana, I did really like Georgiana. I think Georgiana had the most forward moving action, because she at least had the whole thing with the trial with Lockhart and everything with her inheritance and discovering things about her father and her mother. There was all that with Georgiana that had nothing to do with like a relationship or a romance. And then yeah, plus the addition of her mother popping up pretty late in the season. Once again, that has nothing to do with like a romantic relationship. That's just a thing between a mother and daughter. Weirdly enough, I think Georgiana had the best stuff going on this season, because I felt like Georgiana at least had a really great plot and things that were moving forward. Once again, everybody else, it was all about romance. Nothing else to fill in miscellaneous gaps. And I'm just super glad Georgiana finally found her mother. Everything going on between her and the Montrose family was great. I loved it. I loved all the drama, the conflict. Georgiana kind of being like, "Hey, don't you walk over me. I'm the one with the money here. Don't you walk all over me and tell me what to do at the end of the day, you know?" And yeah, because what mattered to her was her happiness as well. You know, Georgiana wanted her own happiness because, once again, kind of putting others in front of herself when she needed to think about herself. Very much like Charlotte. I think that was a lot of what the season was about. You know, I think a lot of the season was about people. They need to come to terms with themselves, put themselves first, and be with the person they really need to be with. You know, and rather than sooner rather than later, because the longer you wait to be with someone, the more regret you'll have, the more bad things might happen. Especially like Mary, for instance. There was a whole big thing near the end. Mary got deathly ill, and Tom kind of started realizing, oh my god, my wife might die, and I've been a complete ass to her, you know. So yeah, Mary right there, like that whole thing with her near death, kind of pushes a lot of characters to be like, hey, the time is now, the time is present to take charge of things. And I do just want to run down all these couples really quickly because I haven't entirely touched on everybody just yet. But yeah, Charlotte and Colburn, yay, they finally get together at the end of the season. I think we all knew they were going to get together. I think we all knew poor Ralph was going to go bye Ralph. But yeah, it took forever for Charlotte and Colburn to get together. I think definitely another big complaint with me for this season. I just wish there was more scenes between Charlotte and Colburn. Once again, like I was mentioning, Charlotte and Colburn, I think they spend the whole season kind of just looking at each other forlornly off to the side, staring at each other with words unspoken. The one episode with Augusta and Edward, that's really the only episode that forces them to be together. It's like, thank God for Augusta and Edward's drama to force Charlotte and Colburn together. Thank God. Because other than that, they had no other reason to communicate with each other. So I wish Charlotte and Colburn had a lot more to do with each other this season, to kind of build it up, rather than just staring at each other. I do feel like the writing was a little weak for them this season compared to like last season. But I'm glad Charlotte and Colburn got together. Yay. Thank God. A beautiful wedding. She looked great at the end of that wedding dress. Yes. And at the end, there was a flash forward to 1 year later. Looks like they had a kid together. She had her school. Yes. It's great. Georgiana and Otis. I think we all knew Georgiana was eventually going to end up with Otis. I think that was a given. I don't think she was ever going to get with Harry. That whole thing was a big ploy. No one was going to be happy. So yeah, I'm glad Georgiana and Otis got back together. Thank God, because they belong together. Tom and Mary. I really enjoyed Tom and Mary this season. I always love their domestic squabbles with each other, because they're kind of the most real couple in a sense on this show, because they've been married for a long time, they have children. Yeah, they've been through ups and downs, highs and lows, so I always loved Tom and Mary and their interactions and their domestic squabbles. And yeah, the drama of the hotel and taking away the poor areas, the poor neighborhoods. Yeah, Mary's very passionate about, hey, don't do that, you're hurting these people. And yeah, Tom, it's kind of like money. And you know what? I honestly thought Mary was going to die. You guys, did anyone for a hot second think Mary was going to die? I really did. And then poor Tom was going to feel terribly guilty. Moving on. Arthur and Harry. Dear God, I loved Arthur and Harry this season. I think the Arthur and Harry relationship was done absolutely wonderfully on this show. And I think done very realistically and very believably, considering this time period during the Regency era, because yeah, they're two men. They can't show any sort of public affection or anything. It would have been highly scandalous and ruined their reputations, for two men to do that. So I love the believability of their relationship. The fact that, they're always kind of standing, and have their hand behind their back or something, and just kind of looking at each other and having conversation. And they're like several feet apart, and yeah, speaking in like code half the time with one another. I absolutely loved Arthur and Harry. It seems like they were going to make it work there at the end, the show left it all very up in the air and very happy, when I think realistically, if this was to go on for another season, I think realistically they would start really facing some issues like, oh, how can we really be happy, because we have to be very private. We can't even be public like everybody else, But yeah, Arthur and Harry was definitely an absolute joy this season. I loved the two of them. I'm really glad they managed to make something work by the end. Moving on, Lady Denham and Mr. Price. This is a relationship that just kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah, everybody had a relationship. I kid you not. Every single character had some sort of relationship, including Lady Denham. I liked Lady Denham and Mr. Price just because of the fact that they're older. You know, they are the oldest cast members on this show, and I kind of liked that whole thing was showing that even if you're very old, you know, that doesn't mean you have to stop loving and stop enjoying your life, you know, that you can still find happiness in your later age, you know. So I liked what Lady Denham's story was kind of doing there, and I'm kind of glad that she did not get married, you know, because she was so worried about losing her house and losing her title and her name and whatnot, you know, what marriage would kind of do. And I'm glad that her and Mr. Price kind of came to that compromise, that Lady Denham could still kind of have everything she's grown accustomed to and comfortable with in her late life. Moving on, Edward and Augusta. Oh my god. I think out of all of the kind of the major plots going on, I was really into the Edward and Augusta storyline because it was so scandalous. It was definitely making me think of Lydia Bennet and Mr. Wickham from Pride and Prejudice. I was very much getting those very heavy vibes of Wickham and Lydia, especially the whole elopement, and they head off, and yeah, Colburn and Charlotte have to go chasing after them. Yeah, seriously, I loved this subplot with Augusta and Edward, because I kept kind of going back and forth with it, and I think this was deliberately done throughout the entire season. What were Edward's true agendas, you know, because I was having such a difficult time, like, does he really love her, does he not, is it all a game? Because I was kind of almost wondering if it was going to start off as a thing that he was purely after her inheritance, but then over time that he was going to kind of grow, like, oh wait, I think I do actually like her, oh wait, I think I actually love her, you know, like, I thought he was going to kind of gradually start going that way and admit to her at some point, like, hey, this started off as me just wanting to get your inheritance, but now I truly like you, you know. But it didn't go that way. I kind of thought it was going to do that. I thought it was going to kind of go the predictable route and do that and do something to redeem him, because Edward's character has been so absolutely vile. But no, it doesn't go in that direction at all. So I like that kind of back and forth. You know, what is going on with Edward, and yeah, and poor Augusta, is she just gonna is she gonna be ruined at the end of the day? Is she gonna lose all faith and hope and love, you know, if he is lying to her? It does seem like Augusta came out of this whole thing in one piece, you know. She's still very much kind of sad at the end, but it's like, I think there is definitely someone out there who is better for her than Edward Denham, you know. She definitely deserves someone way better than him, that scoundrel. And I feel like Edward, he's such a good villain, you guys. He's such a good villain. I love his kind of complexity in a sense. It's like he knows he's the bad guy. You know, he knows he's the bad guy. He knows the things that he wants and desires. He goes after them ruthlessly, ambitiously, you know. I think there was a slight bit of a shift in him to some extent, because I like that moment when he's talking to Lady Denham on the stairs, and the whole elopement has officially ended, and she's talking to him, and he's like, yeah, you know me, Aunt, I'm a completely unfeeling person. But when he says that line of dialogue to her, I love that moment in Jack Fox. That's the actor who plays Edward. I love that kind of that what Jack Fox does there. He has a bit of a break in Edward's voice. Edward's voice kind of cracks and breaks there when he kind of says, you know me, Aunt, I'm an unfeeling, uncaring person. I can't remember the exact line of dialogue, but his voice kind of cracks and breaks there. Like, Edward has kind of realized, you know, God, I'm a despicable human being, and I was going to do this horrible thing to this young girl, and I'm always going to be like this. You know, it's like he kind of comes to that realization that he knows he's always going to be a terrible person, that's never going to change, and there's really no hope or redemption for him. You know, it's like he kind of finally accepts that, and he's kind of a little upset about it, it feels like. But yeah, it definitely seems like at the end of the show, when we do see Charlotte and Colburn get married, and she's kind of walking around the room looking at everybody. And if you look in the background, it definitely looks like Edward. He passes by another young woman and they kind of make eyes at each other. Like, Edward is still going to get up to his ways. You know, nothing is going to change him. It's like he kind of had that moment. You know, it's like he had that moment of clarity, like who he really is, but it's like it's still not going to change. He's always going to be the rascal. Moving on, Samuel and Lady Susan, you guys. Oh my god, perhaps my favorite couple of the season. Okay, let me be real with y'all. This was far and away my favorite couple. Oh, I love this. Last time we saw Lady Susan, she was in an episode of season 1 at one of those parties or the balls or whatever. And yeah, Samuel is the brother of Mr. Colburn. He's a lawyer. And I like how he figured into the story because he came in as Georgiana's lawyer. I really loved how he was worked into the show. But yeah, Samuel and Lady Susan. Dear God, these two gave me absolute joy all season because there was kind of this platonic nature going on between them all season because the two of them, they knew, hey, Charlotte and Mr. Colburn, they need to get together. Let me and you kind of work together and try to see if we can push them together. Samuel and Lady Susan, they just knew all the good gossip. You know, they knew exactly everything that was going on the show. And I loved kind of that platonic nature of their relationship initially, and I like how it kind of grew over each episode that they get closer and closer. And yes, Samuel kind of coming to that realization, I think, in the final episode, like, oh, I think I like her. I think I want to marry her. And yeah, poor Lady Susan, I really thought when she got summoned to go back to court by the king, I was like, oh no, this is it. I was like, she's never coming back. I'm going to be so sad and miserable. I was like, Sanditon, do not do this to me. I need Samuel and Lady Susan to get together. Please give me this. So yeah, thank God Lady Susan did not go back to the king. I'm so glad she stayed with Samuel. Now, if they got married, I have no idea. I think we're kind of led to believe that they probably eventually got married, possibly. I hope they did. But yeah, Samuel and Lady Susan, far and away my favorite couple of the season, kind of one of my favorite subplots outside of Edward and Augusta. And then, like I said earlier, everybody has romance this season, including Mrs. Hankins, the sister of the preacher, the priest, whatever he is, the clergy guy, Mrs. Hankins and Dr. Fuchs. They have a little random subplot of a romance going on. I liked their story too. It was just really sweet and adorable. And yeah, poor Mrs. Hankins, she's a woman, probably what, in her 40s, maybe late 40s. I can't quite tell her age. But yeah, Mrs. Hankins being considered a spinster at her old age, and she's not gotten married. And yeah, here's Dr. Fuchs giving her attention, and the two of them really hitting it off, and things that they have in common, and interests and whatnot. And yeah, her brother off to the side being like, no, like he just has absolute control over her, and just does not wish her to go off and get married. You know, so I love the subplot with Mrs. Hankins and Dr. Fuchs. Super sweet. And yeah, I think that's kind of it, you guys. I kind of just want to run down all of the couples and the things that I was enjoying in particular with everybody. But yeah, you guys, in the comments below, I definitely would love to hear your thoughts about this final season of Sanditon. What were things that were working for you? What were things that were not working for you? Like I said, for the most part, I really did highly enjoy this season, but I do think, I think I would have loved to have had an additional 2 episodes and kind of a little bit more stuff going on rather than just the relationships and just the couples. You know, I would have loved a bit more kind of just with Sanditon as a whole, because Sanditon is very much kind of its own character on this show, and I feel like season 1 did a good job of doing that, making Sanditon kind of its own entity, and I felt like that was definitely lacking this season with just Sanditon as a whole. But maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. Maybe y'all don't feel the same way at all. But yeah, just let me know your thoughts about this final season of Sanditon. Once again, highs and lows for you. And yeah, where do you think these characters, what their futures, what may lie in their futures? Just let me know. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos.